Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Walking with Nanak podcast. So, आज जो हम chapter discuss करेंगे, that is chapter 7, and this chapter is essentially on Guru Tegh Bahadur. Um, so, for those of you who've read the book and who are familiar with the format of the book, essentially the book is divided into these three main narrative styles. जिसमें एक is the fictional part of Guru Nanak, and then the second part is me visiting those places where Guru Nanak, जहाँ पे वो fictional जो scene है वो unfold होता है, and the third part essentially is a history of all the gurus. So essentially what I do is I go back in chronology. So हम शुरू करते हैं गुरु गोबिंद सिंह से, then we go to Guru Tegh Bahadur and so on, so and Guru Harkrishan, and so हम इस जो है ऐसा ऐसा सारे जो गुरु हैं we'll cover all of them. So essentially it's a story, it's a book that really tries to kind of really sum up what Sikhism is, perhaps. That pretty much is the goal. So this chapter essentially is on Guru Tegh Bahadur. There's a little kind of interesting anecdote about Guru Tegh Bahadur and my association with Guru Tegh Bahadur. So the first time I went to India, this was in 2000 and I guess 9 or 10. I mean, of course, this is much before I was starting to think about this book and had actually seriously begun researching on the book. But even at that point, like I was at least aware of some basic understanding of Sikh history. I knew about Guru Tegh Bahadur, I knew about Guru Arjun, particularly I mean these two gurus because inki execution hoti hai. So Guru Tegh Bahadur is also executed by Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb, and Guru Arjun is executed by Emperor Jahangir. So in that way, these are the only two gurus who have been executed तो by the Mughal emperor. So वो मेरे ज़हन में एक जो है वो काफ़ी that's something that was in my mind. So I was essentially in Amritsar around Golden Temple और हम रात को ठहरे थे, and I from Amritsar I got a picture of Guru Tegh Bahadur, एक जो उनका poster होता है, which then I carried to Delhi because हमारा trip उसके बाद दिल्ली जा रहा था, and then from Delhi eventually I brought it back to Lahore, and that poster I still have in my home in Lahore. So that's a really so I've had some kind of at least fascination with Guru Tegh Bahadur, and I find his story very interesting and actually very, very important in the sort of growth and the evolution of Sikhism and Sikh Guruhood in the religion and how it evolved to be. So let's talk about the assassination of Guru Tegh Bahadur, because this is a very, very important event. The chapter actually begins with this assassination, and the assassination is happening on the orders of Emperor Aurangzeb, who we also know is really the last effective Mughal emperor. और उसके बाद जो है मुगल एम्पायर का भी जो है वो डाउनफॉल शुरू हो जाता है. And Guru Tegh Bahadur is also the second last. I mean, before Guru Gobind Singh, he's the ninth Guru, I believe. And then you have Guru Gobind Singh, and then you have Guru Granth Sahib. And he on Aurangzeb's orders, essentially, this execution of Guru Tegh Bahadur happens in Delhi, in Chandni Chowk. And in fact, there's a Gurdwara in Delhi, Chandni Chowk, that sort of commemorates the spot where this assassination execution happened. And I've also had a privilege to visit that Gurdwara. But what is also really interesting or kind of important about the story, interesting perhaps is the wrong word, but what is important about the story is also the gruesome nature in which this execution is happening. So it's very similar to Guru Arjun's execution, which we will talk about later. But I keep on making these parallels because I feel like these are very, very important. These are very interconnected stories in a way, because they all both mark execution, and they really had a very, very important role to play in the evolution or the development of Sikhism, and particularly in the next Guru. So, for example, Guru Arjun's execution played a very, very important role in how the tenure of his son Guru Har Gobind was defined, and similarly, the execution of Guru Tegh Bahadur then plays a very, very important role in how the tenure of his son Guru Gobind Singh is then defined. And we both know these are very, very important gurus in terms of the political development of the religion. So in a very similar way to how Guru Arjun's execution was very gruesome, Guru Tegh Bahadur's execution was also very gruesome. So he was beheaded, and then there was an order that nobody is allowed to remove his body because the emperor wanted this execution to serve as a symbol for people of fear, of power. So he was kind of exhibiting that power. But there's also an interesting parallel between these two executions of Guru Arjun and Guru Tegh Bahadur is that both of them happen at the early stages of the emperor's tenure. So Emperor Aurangzeb had also just come to the power after a very brutal civil war, just where he ended up killing his brother Dara Shikoh and other brothers, and then also ends up incarcerating his father, Emperor Shah Jahan. So it's kind of like unprecedented in Mughal history, even though Mughal history and Mughal succession is full of violence. What is unprecedented about Emperor Aurangzeb is that the emperor before him is still alive while he comes and claims the throne, and he's essentially incarcerated. And this has never happened. Brothers have killed brothers. Brothers, Mughal princes have killed nephews, and so on and so forth. But nobody has ever claimed essentially the throne for themselves while the emperor is still alive, and then essentially removed. I mean, they've been rebellions, but nobody's been kind of successful in that way. So Emperor Aurangzeb ka jo rise hai is kind of violent, very similar to how Shah Jahan kind of came. And this is and the execution of Guru Tegh Bahadur happens during the early stages of his emperor kind of his tenure. Similarly, Guru Arjun ki jo assassination, his execution, and that also happens at an early stage of Emperor Jahangir's accession to the throne. अभी भी वो भी recently power में आया है. Even though his rise is not as violent as Emperor Aurangzeb's, but there is still a contentious kind of relationship that exists. And I will talk about that in more detail when we talk about Emperor Jahangir and Guru Arjun. But what is important to note at this point is that both of these emperors are essentially young into their tenures. Now, why does that matter? It matters because essentially when you are new, especially to that seat of power, which is the largest empire in the world, essentially, with a lot of money, a lot of kind of political capital behind it, there's a lot of insecurity in your position because you know how you've claimed the throne for yourself. You also know that essentially ये चीज stable नहीं है, like somebody else can rebel against you. So you are looking to essentially mark your territory over this throne. You are looking for ways to exert your empire and your authority. And in that way, essentially, the execution of a religious leader like Guru Tegh Bahadur and Guru Arjun then plays a very, very important role as well. More so for Guru Arjun, perhaps less so for Emperor Aurangzeb. But that's also an important point. Aurangzeb has just come to power, and through this execution, he also wants to show the world how powerful he is and how brutal he is. And if anybody even thinks about rebelling against him, even though Guru Tegh Bahadur did not really rebel against him, it's a very different context. But you can still use that execution for propaganda. So the message that Emperor Aurangzeb wants to give by this execution, and then also by ordering that nobody can remove his body and his head from Chandni Chowk, then essentially is a way to show that I'm powerful and to kind of exert that really authority over the throne, a really kind of way in which you think you are strengthening your claim to the throne. So that's a very important point, of course. And of course, on that order, nobody removes or picks up the body of Guru Arjun, Guru Tegh Bahadur, and his head. Or फिर रिवायत ये कि एक आंधी आती है and everything becomes dark, and then there is this sort of an untouchable devotee of the Guru who picks up the body, picks up the head, and takes the body to Guru Gobind Singh. And वहाँ पे then Guru Gobind Singh essentially cremates him and then completes the funeral rites. And then that essentially the person who had removed the body then acquires a very important role in Sikh iconography. In fact, उनका मुझे नाम भी मैं यहाँ पे I'm just gonna read that out. Yeah, I mean, I can't Hindu, untouchable Hindu Jeta. So that was his name. Okay, now there are multiple traditions of why Emperor Aurangzeb executed Guru Tegh Bahadur. एक जो बहुत popular narrative है वो ये है कि essentially Kashmiri Pandit थे who came to Guru Tegh Bahadur and requested him to intercede on his behalf with the emperor, because Emperor Aurangzeb had re-established jizya tax on non-Muslims in Kashmir and in fact in different parts of the empire as well, and the Hindu Pandits were being negatively impacted by him, and they come to Guru Tegh Bahadur and they request for him to intercede on their behalf with the emperor कि उनको tax जो है वो माफ कर दिया जाए. And there's also a riwayat. Essentially, it is Guru Gobind Singh, who's a young kid at this point, who essentially intercedes and who requests his father to actually go and make that request on the behalf of the Kashmiri Pandit. So he says that because Guru Gobind Singh says that he cannot think of a better person to go and speak on the behalf of the marginalized community. So he is the one. So there's also a story which essentially brings him into the narrative, and of course, then there are other narratives as well. Um, there, for example, there's Cunningham talks about how Guru Tegh Bahadur was supporting some of the rebels or people who were sort of anti-Aurangzeb, and that became a reason, and Aurangzeb wanted to use that as an example. There's other narratives about how the different kind of parallel movements, parallel Guru movements, and I'll talk about them as well. जिसमें हर राय की मूवमेंट सॉरी राम राय की मूवमेंट आती है एंड धीरमल की मूवमेंट आती है पृथ्वीचंद की जो औलाद है उनकी मूवमेंट आती है एंड दे वो काइंड ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंसिंग द मुगल एम्परर and the Mughal kind of court against Guru Tegh Bahadur. So there's also those kind of traditions. And I think at this point, like, I mean, of course, many scholars, many historians have talked about this, and there's a lot of great academic work on why this execution has happened. But for me, perhaps that's not really a huge focus of my work, or at least at this stage in my career. Like, I'm not really interested in engaging in that debate. What I am interested in looking at is essentially how does that impact Sikhism, and how does that impact the next guru, and what does this execution mean in the sort of broader narrative of how the religion has developed. So what is मैंने जो थोड़ा सा पहले शुरू में बात की थी about the comparison between Guru Arjun and Guru Tegh Bahadur and his execution. And I think even though I don't really want to get into Guru Arjun and that execution, but I feel like the story is really important hai, or very connected hai, with the story that we can't really talk about Guru Tegh Bahadur's execution in assassination without really looking at the impact of Guru Arjun's execution and assassination. Because that execution essentially really changed the face of Sikhism and Guruhood. So pehle jo hai, you can almost think of this as a fluid movement, which is purely spiritual, and there is kind of political hai, I mean, because all movements are political in that way. But it's not really violent, it's not really militant, it's not really exerting its authority in that way. And it's kind of like more, it's kind of like peaceful, really sort of passive perhaps is the right word. So it's passive, peaceful kind of movement in that way. But then when that execution happens, Guru Hargobind, he makes a choice essentially of militarizing the Sikh movement and really identifies himself in the regal political sphere. And in a way, you can make an argument that the office of Guru became more political after that. So, I mean, became less passive and became more militant, more aggressive, and kind of more protective about his heritage and his identity. So in many ways, the identity of Sikhism, kind of that process of codifying, which then really is codified by Guru Gobind Singh after the execution of Guru Tegh Bahadur, that process really starts by Guru Hargobind. In many ways, I've also made an argument in the book that Guru Gobind Singh, in many ways, defined himself in the figure of Guru Hargobind, because Guru Hargobind का एक बहुत एक larger than life essentially एक image है in that Sikh tradition. In fact, I'll talk about this. Guru Tegh Bahadur was the son of Guru Hargobind, and he had his sword, and that sword then was passed from Guru Tegh Bahadur to Guru Gobind Singh. So there's a very clear legacy that Guru Gobind Singh then claims from Guru Hargobind and defines himself in that image, and really kind of does an excellent job in that. But essentially, the execution of Guru Arjun is also something which really which is a huge kind of wound in Sikh history. Like it really fosters this relationship between the Mughal Empire and Sikh gurus. But having said that, after a little while, this relationship kind of gets better. Even Guru Hargobind का relationship भी जो है वो Emperor Jahangir के साथ जो है वो बेहतर हो जाता है, and subsequently इतना जो है वो confrontational relationship नहीं रहता. But that wound still exists, even though Sikhism has kind of evolved and Sikh Gurudom, that office has evolved, but that wound has remained, because how can such a wound even be healed? And then when Guru Tegh Bahadur's execution happens, you can almost think of how that must have revived that wound, तो वो जो एक चीज़ जो लोग भूलना चाह रहे थे और उसको अवॉइड करना चाह रहे थे, सडनली दैट wound is once again it comes forward, and that existential crisis, you can almost imagine that जो उनके devotees होंगे गुरु के Sikh devotees होंगे around that time, because they also don't know. Guru Gobind Singh is still very young, and they don't know how history is going to unfold and how kind of what a powerful role he's going to play. And there are these parallel Sikh movements that are saying that Guru Tegh Bahadur is not the right Guru, and Guru Gobind Singh is not the right Guru. So you can also imagine कि इनके जो followers होंगे around that time, what an existential crisis this execution must have played, in a very similar way how the execution of Guru Arjun played on the psyche of the devotees of Guru Arjun at that time. So it was really an existential crisis. Even the history में आप उसके हमेशा में बात कर सकते हैं. But you really have to imagine that situation, that it was almost like an existential crisis, and it was really refreshened those wounds, and it was a very, very difficult time around that time. अच्छा, फिर एक और जो important बात है, in order to understand the tenure of Guru Tegh Bahadur, we really need to understand कि what was the time period in which he became Guru. वो बड़ा interesting time है, because उस time पे there are multiple competing movements within the Sikh Guru movement who are all claiming legitimacy, who are all claiming that they are the rightly appointed Guru. Of course, now we have the privilege of hindsight and we know how history has unfolded, but around that time, there is no mass communication. So you can really see that propaganda in some ways is kind of easier, misinformation is kind of easier, even though in today's world, that's really almost laughable. And with more information, how much false information is now widespread. But at that point, I mean, अगर आप बहुत दूर हैं सेंटर से, दिल्ली से, लाहौर से, अमृतसर से, and all these important आनंदपुर साहब से, जो important centers हैं of Sikh learning, then there's a chance that you have never heard of Guru Tegh Bahadur, for example, or there's a chance that you've never heard of Guru Gobind Singh. But you've only heard of, let's say, Ram Rai, or you've only heard of Prithvi Chand, or you've only heard of Dheermal, who are all these parallel movements. So all of that is happening at that point, and all of them are claiming to be the right Guru. So basically, context ये है कि there are multiple claims to Guruhood that are happening around the time that Guru Tegh Bahadur comes to power, and essentially Guru Har Krishan, who was a young boy around 6 or 7, and he dies of natural causes, chickenpox, and then Guru Tegh Bahadur, by almost like a stroke of luck, becomes the next Guru, because वो गद्दी का जो direction है वो बिल्कुल change हो गया. So you can almost imagine कि अगर वो death ना हो, अगर Guru Har Krishan की death ना हो, then Guru Gobind Singh is never going to become the Guru, and history is going to unfold in a very different way. But at this point, what is happening is that Guru Har Krishan is the Guru, and he passes away, and then he appoints his great uncle, क्योंकि वो I think 2 or 3 generations बड़े हैं, Guru Tegh Bahadur, and he becomes the next Guru. So for 20 years, essentially, Guru Tegh Bahadur was not the Guru, and there were other Gurus. So Guru Har Gobind के बाद he appoints his son Guru Har Rai as the next Guru. In fact, उधर भी जो है फिर एक rivalry शुरू हो जाती है कि जो Guru Har Rai के जो बड़े भाई हैं, Dheermal, he challenges that appointment, and he sort of rebels against him, and that movement starts. फिर गुरु उसके साथ साथ जो है फिर Guru Har Rai के जो he also has 2 sons, Ram Rai and Har Krishna, and he appoints Har Krishna, and Ram Rai essentially rebels against his father, even though so his conflict between Ram Rai and Guru Har Rai, I'll talk about that later as well. वो पहले शुरू हो जाती है because Guru Ram Rai misquotes Granth at the Mughal court, and that really pisses off Guru Har Rai, and then he bypasses him and makes Guru Har Krishna as the next Guru, and then Ram Rai then rebels against Har Krishna. So you have that parallel movement as well. So Ram Rai की movement भी चल रही है, Dheermal की movement भी चल रही है, and then you have this very old movement जो Prithvi Chand की movement है, which perhaps I feel like is perhaps out of all the movements was at some point the most powerful movement against Sikh Guru. So Prithvi Chand जो है is the elder son of Guru Arjun, and this is also an example of how the stories of Guru Tegh Bahadur and Guru Arjun kind of intersect. So Prithvi Chand is the elder brother of Guru Arjun, and when Guru Arjun is appointed as the next Guru, he rebels against his father and also his brother, and then claims the gaddi for himself, and then starts a parallel movement. फिर Prithvi Chand के आगे फिर वो गद्दी चलती जाती है, and in fact I believe that Gaddi is still alive in many parts of the world. So Prithvi Chand ki jo aulad hai, he carries forward that Gaddi, and then unki jo aulad hai, he also carries forward that Gaddi. So I think by this time Shaibu Gaddi itni powerful nahi hai as the time of Prithvi Chand and his son, but even that movement is happening. So at the time that Guru Tegh Bahadur then becomes the Guru, there are all these parallel movements, and they're all kind of. Or then the Mughal state becomes very important because a lot of them then try to win favor of the Mughal state because it's a powerful state, or unka khayal hai, a state patronage of religious institutions is very important. We see that through temples, we see that through gurudwaras. So essentially, you can almost think of this as this: कि अगर Mughal court कहता है कि भाई ये जो है ये गद्दी ठीक है, कि Ram Rai जो है he is the next guru, then that almost becomes the official truth. That becomes the truth that is coming from the divine, who is the emperor at that point. So then winning the patronage of the Mughal court and winning their favor becomes very important. So all of these parallel movements are trying to kind of influence the Mughal courts, and जो भी उनके वाकिफ हैं, nobles हैं, जो भी हैं, they're trying to kind of get that influence because they feel like that's very important. So and these threats are very, very serious because eventually they lead to execution and death, as we see in the case of Guru Tegh Bahadur. So wo ho raha hai. But what I also find very interesting in the story of Guru Tegh Bahadur is that he, essentially being the son of Guru Har Gobind, he was bypassed once. So he did not become the Guru, and I think he was not even expecting to become the Guru. So he spends 20 years of his life not being the Guru after essentially Guru Har Gobind has bypassed him because he's appointed his son, Guru Har Rai, different son, Guru Har Rai, as the next Guru. So essentially for 20 years then he's not engaging in politics, and he uses that time to essentially think a lot about divinity, and he does a lot of poetry. And wo bada interesting hai, after Guru Arjun, he becomes the first Sikh Guru to actually do a lot of poetry, and then that becomes part of the Granth Sahib. So once again, another example of how these two stories are intersecting. So what is happening is Guru Arjun ने जो है वो ग्रंथ जो है वो formalize कर दिए, वो codify कर दिए, and essentially जो ग्रंथ की even जो the form today, अब उसके बाद में फिर Guru Gobind Singh really finalizes it, and by that what that means is that he included the poetry of his father into the Granth, but 90% of the work has already been done. So जो ग्रंथ है Guru Arjun की वो जो finalize हो चुकी है, and that's really essentially in many ways the Granth that is regarded as Guru Granth Sahib today. And uske baad, after Guru Arjun, because he essentially is, so after Guru Nanak, Guru Arjun is the most, has written the most sort of poetry and text. So Granth ke andar sabse zyada text jo hai wo unka hai. And then after him, because of political halat aise ban gaye, and that's also a big factor. That's also something, the point that I was trying to make. The impact of the execution of Guru Arjun on the nature of the Gaddi has changed. So usse pehle jo hai, sare guru jo hai, wo poetry kar rahe hain, they're thinking about spirituality because that's what the time, that is what the order of the time is. But then after his execution, they are now, the interests have become very different because it's a survival mode, it's an existential mode. So they are not doing poetry, they're not engaging in those metaphysical questions, perhaps in a similar way that gurus before, or at least till Guru Arjun's time, were doing. But because Guru Tegh Bahadur essentially was not the Guru, so he had those 20 years, and at that time he did a lot of that meditation and engaged with a lot of themes, which are essentially themes that come up in Guru Nanak's poetry and the poetries of other gurus as well. So he's talking about the nature of divinity, about supernatural, about spirituality, about all those things, and then they eventually became part of the Guru Granth Sahib. But then by a stroke of luck, when he becomes the Guru, or by chance, when he becomes the Guru, essentially he then takes on a very, very political role. तो उनका गुरु तेग बहादुर का ये बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है, जो आपको बाकी गुरु में शायद उस तरह नहीं नजर आता, कि he essentially takes up a very, very political role and then really works essentially to sort of form alliances and works and tries to kind of, जो local Sikh officials हैं, essentially empowers them to make sure that basically his position is strengthened vis-a-vis all these other parallel movements that are happening around that time. So he really takes on that very active political role because he knows what a crisis he is, what a crisis the Gaddi is facing at this point. And he's old, he's mature, and he's seen the world. So he takes on that very political role, but there's also a very, very kind of spiritual side of him. Of course, there's a spiritual side to all the Sikh gurus, but there's a very kind of, which is expressed through Guru Tegh Bahadur ke time pe Guru Tegh Bahadur ka there's a very spiritual side that is reflected in his poetry. Then that of course is now included in the Guru Granth Sahib. So that's something. These two are very different parts of the personality. Guru Tegh Bahadur really brings that together beautifully, which is very interesting for me. Yeah, so I think that's essentially for me is something which is really interesting about Guru Tegh Bahadur's story. Um, all those things that I've talked about, वही कि इनका basically कि at one point he's completely bypassed, and that allows him to really then think about spirituality in a way that not many other gurus get the time of. But then when he actually is given authority, he really plays a very very active important political role. जब active political role क्या है उसके अंदर थोड़ा सा मैं उसकी बात भी कर लेते हैं. Yeah, essentially at this point, जो है, I believe it was still the Masand system if that had not been changed. I might be wrong on this, but essentially what you have is that because there is no उस तरह का mass communication नहीं है, उस तरह का mass travel नहीं है, so you have representatives of the Guru who then almost become these local spiritual leaders in different areas and different communities. So हर शहर के अंदर हर बड़े town में और एक region में there will be a spiritual leader who is essentially collecting Daswant and who is preaching the message of the Guru on the behalf of Guru. And sometimes, I mean, there is historically there's enough evidence to talk about the corruption कि कुछ जो है फिर वो parallel अपनी एक movement शुरू कर देते हैं. So what a lot of parallel Sikh movements are also doing is they are trying to influence these Sikh officials because they know how powerful they are. So for example, for a lot of local Sikhs, let's imagine living in Lahore, they've probably heard of Guru Tegh Bahadur, let's say, but they've never seen him, they never interacted with him personally, but they've interacted with the local Masand or the local official, and through him they learn about Sikhism. So then he becomes a very important power player almost. And Guru Tegh Bahadur recognizes that. So essentially what he does is that he kind of reaches out to different Sikh officials and he kind of almost gives them even more power because he knows that how much influence they can have on essentially on the devotees. So that's a very important role that he plays, and he also tries to make these different alliances with different local leaders because he knows that what a precarious position this is for Sikh gurus, especially at a time when Emperor Aurangzeb has just come into power and there are all these different parallel Sikh movements that are trying to influence the Mughal court in order to get benefits for them and in order to be recognized for them. And of course, for Cunningham, and who many Sikh scholars and many Sikh devotees even reject it, but essentially he makes an argument that it is not really the Pandit Hindus that's why Guru Tegh Bahadur was executed, but it was his political kind of activities, which was allying with people and officials who were kind of opposed to Emperor Aurangzeb. That really essentially what resulted in his execution. That's a claim that Cunningham makes. But as I said previously, that's not really a question that I'm trying to investigate anymore. I think for me, what is more important is the implications of what that execution is. So of course, eventually he is executed in Delhi, and then we know what happens after that. Guru Gobind Singh comes to power, and then plays a very very important role in defining the future of Sikhism and really defining the Gaddi of Sikh. And as I mentioned previously, that he modeled himself in the image of Guru Har Gobind, and then almost became a symbol on his own. And we'll talk about him more, I think. We've already talked a lot about him, but we'll talk more about Guru Har Gobind as well, because I feel like that's a very important chapter as well to understand Guru Gobind Singh and how Sikh Gaddi has evolved. Okay, so on that note, I feel like once again this is a very short episode because also the chapter was so small. So I'm going to end it here, but I really hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation. If you have any comments, please comment and let me know what you think. And I'll see you in next week or maybe in a couple of weeks, because I feel like I'm more pattern bun. I'm not able to do a podcast every week, but I'm able to do it once after every 2 weeks. So hopefully I'll try to do one next week. But if not, there will be definitely a podcast the week after. Thank you so much for listening.